Should I look at that thing or you?
Okay,
All right, all right. I'm self-conscious about these things. I'm trying. But what were you asking me?
Busking.
Yeah.
And how it might relate to this project.
Yeah. Well, I think my main thing that I can do is busk. I can stand by myself and sing a song I made up. And when I would play on the street when I was young, people would stop and listen to the song and give me money, you know. And Kent Finley was someone that was like, there's a career right there. You're going to eat every day and you're going to be really happy, you know. And then, so that was always like, you don't have to sign up for it unless you're in New Orleans or New York. I mean, there's places you have to get in line, but for the most part, they can't keep you from throwing your head on the ground. And I could get food today if I had to, and probably a place to stay. And my dad didn't have any, I mean, I had no expectations. There wasn't, my family they'd been rich when I was a kid. My dad was rich and he lost everything when I was 15. And so, and everyone that I grew up with knew it, you know, so I didn't have to do anything, you know. So what if I was going to make the same amount singing as bussing, you know, and even more working alone in front of the place. And then they ask you, like, will you come in, you know? And then in my mind, I didn't want, like you, I know a lot of young people like this, I don't even want a record deal. Fuck a record deal, you know. I did though, I think. And then Keith Sykes, I met Keith, and he'd had one, you know, and he said he was gonna get me one, and he did. He got every, and like if he called a record company, they came to see me.
When I see from the outside, don't let me put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
When I see you doing this, I feel like this is a metaphor for busking, where there's no company in between you and the people.
Yeah.
You're standing on the street playing your songs, and the people are listening, and just seems like that to me. The spirit of that runs.
I hadn't thought of it like that. Yeah, and it's free, you know. And then that it sounds like what that would be too. Although you can't probably when you busk, you can't really talk much unless they talk to you. Which when you ever listen to those Jesse Fuller songs, you can I can always feel like I can hear that he's like, I'm playing this for people going by. In fact, even the San Francisco song, I'm like, I think he just wanted to say San Francisco Bay a bunch of times and play that thing for 6 minutes. And Tour's like, would you hear it? Oh, that San Francisco Bay is amazing. You know? Yeah. And it's a wonderful song. Yeah, I'm just going to ramble. I'm baked, so. The year before it came out, I was talking to Anita, who was the Moondog's sister. I was like, that was probably the best year of my life. It was having a record deal, and then the year leading up to the record coming out. And then Jimmy was like, and then that day after that, everything's going to be, you're going to start getting criticized a lot. And Rita Coolidge, too. She was like, I want to tell you something. You're expecting a bunch of compliments. Don't. Tomorrow your friends start telling you you've changed. And like, and everyone's going to like every song but one. And you're going to really care about it, you know. That record, when it came out, people said it was really great, and so I was like getting puffing up, not quite wearing shades, but, you know, starting to think. And then we were in San Diego. I'll tell you, there's a baseball player named George Brett. He's a friend of Jimmy Buffett's, and there was the Nashville scene. As I pick up the San Diego scene, and there's this picture of me, and it's like a review, and it says, I hate Todd Snider, and I'm gonna tell you why. And then she starts in on that you think you know somebody song that is just embarrassing, and then it hits this speed bump where the fucking dad is also, she was like, this is awful. And I was like, well, that's the one that everybody likes him. Everybody likes that. And then as soon as I read it, and like I could feel myself like I was like, oh, I care about that a lot. And then Seamus goes, hey man, George Brett wants to meet you. And I was like, okay, hi George. You know, what's the matter, Alma? I'm like, yeah, I didn't ask him shit, you know. Isn't he the one with the sticky shit on the bat? Yeah, I was like, I had that. And was just in my mind going, how am I going to find out who that motherfucker is? Like major fun. There was, because we'd been through so much. I had gotten signed to Capitol first and then fired for being an alcoholic. And then that's when I started chain smoking weed. I was like, all right, well, I gotta stop doing that. What else can I do? You know, this girl that lived upstairs was like, I smoke this shit all day. I'm like, oh, there you go. and then I guess I thought that kind of was over. And then, let me think, I'm just hard to remember, but like, I got an advance from the first record company, and that's how I put a band together. And when I had a little band, but I didn't need more money for it. And we were on the excitement plan. And I figured you don't get two of these things, you know. And Keith was like, no, it'll be fine. And there was a big article in the paper about like, well, the Memphis paper, there was an article like, this is our boy, you know. But up here, there was like, this fucking jerk, you know. And then I went back to the Daily Planet and started working again, and every fucking time, it was like the Doors movie. It'd be some young guy going, I work for something records, and we think you'd be great, and you're from, and they all was like, we're gonna get you a producer, and it was gonna be grunge, folk grunge, you know. So that was and then Jimmy Buffett was like, well, I was playing at, you know, there was things where a lot of bands on the brink of a record deal are playing. And all the people that had asked me to be grunge were there at the same time. And so that morning I made up the Talkin' Seattle Blues, and that turned the tide. Everyone was like, okay, give us that song and you can be country rock, you know. Like they were like, Uncle Tupelo, what are you talking about, you know? It was the beginning of that shit. I asked the Mavericks manager, I was like, I want to be in No Depression. He's like, I could just call all the people that read that for you. I feel like this is probably what I should have done then. That was what I was good at. But I was so excited to pretend that I knew music. I mean, it's addictive, you know. Someone thinks you're going to make a record, like, all your record collection. What if you were in charge of what the drums did? What if you were in charge, like that record where you wish that thing wasn't there? You could take it all. Well, how could you possibly not? How could this not be your favorite record of all time? Just the idea of hearing it was like, my God. And then I was working with Tony Brown, and out of the gate on the very first day, the first song was All Right Guy. And I had told him, and I think he did a great job. I mean, he thought he understood. I said, Dylan, for my guitar, she got everything she needs. You know, listen to that guitar. That's what I want my guitar to sound like. The Traveling Wilburys were hot as fuck. And so he's like, well, the way they get that sound is you got to do like 5 or 6 of them. I was like, what is going on? I hadn't even heard that yet, you know. I didn't listen to new things. And so it kind of had Aaron Lee would, you know, that's Aaron, and I like it now, but when it's great, it's like him, like ELO, or like, that was like a free-falling sound, you know. That's like 8 guitars, you know, doing the same thing. So that, every time I put that record on, I hear stacked acoustic guitars, and I'm like, oh, damn it. But the rest of it, I wanted to be too rock for country and too country for rock. Eddie Shaver was my favorite guitar player, and Tony made that possible. And then as soon as he was going to let me use my bass player and drummer, but he's like, I'm going to use my buddies. They like played at Memphis State, you know. But I knew that my friend in Memphis, I said, when I was a young friend, I can't make a record with my buddies and still hang out at Newbies, you know. So I begged for them, and Tony was like, all right. And then he goes, but you got to get a guitar player. Who's your favorite guitar player? And he didn't want Keith in there. He was just too much older than us. And I told him that, and Keith was cool about that, but he was also just the player coach anyway, you know. And then I asked him to get Eddie Shaver, and he went and got Eddie Shaver. And then because I had a record deal, I could call publishers, and I called to get all Billy Joe Shaver's songs. One of the first things I did. So they already knew who I was. And then Andy was like, aren't you the person, are you cutting all my dad's songs? And I was like, no. He was like, why'd you get all them songs then? You know? And that was on. And then I went out to their house. And then my favorite thing about that was we stayed at the Shoney's, me and the Joes, and in the morning, Billy and Eddie would come down to my room. We'd have coffee, walk over there together. And every day of that record, Billy I remember I had this big, it was cold. I just remember we both had scars. It was just bundled up. And he sat next to me the whole fucking time that we made that thing. And I just met him a week before. And he was just happy I wanted to hear his songs, you know.
When you did step right up, what had changed in your life compared to when you started doing it?
I mean, it was never going to be the same. And it was just like on the dime, everything changed. We went on the road for the year straight. And as soon as people go on the road, everybody else talks too loud. After a while, about 6 months later, it's like, why is everyone shouting all the time? and then my friends, but my good friends, they didn't mean any harm. Maybe not my friends, but like it seemed like there was this, I'd go someplace before, and like everywhere I went, it seemed like, say, if I'd run into an acquaintance, they'd be like, what's with that shirt or whatever? Or like I was getting the thing, like, and then go, well, I'm not just going to be like, well, I know I was just kissing your ass. And I'd be like, so, but you never used to, like, pick apart my clothes before, you know, like, a lot of people, seemed like right away there was like, some people I knew were like, I'm sure everyone's kissing your ass, so I'm going to turn the heat up. And I was like, wow, I thought I was supposed to be liked a little better. And really, my circle's like, fuck you, nice shoes.
Was that a Memphis circle?
Mm-hmm. I got kept in check. Yeah.
When do you remember, there's that moment when you show up somewhere you've never been and people look at you like you're really something.
Uh-huh.
Was this happening like right around then? It's a weird, hard thing to get used to.
I was at the Memphis Shell and I dyed my hair. I just thought, oh God, no. Oh God. Then I went to the record store a few days later and I thought, oh shit. I thought this was going to be the cool part. What part? Yeah, I thought I'd like it. And then I went to a record store and the guys behind the counter were talking about me, like joking about me, trying to let me know that they knew that I was there. And I was like, I'm Todd Snider, you know, like I could cut them. You know, hey pal, that's me. And they're like, duh. I'm like, okay, all right. But at first I got defensive, and then I guess kind of got used to it. I dyed my hair red the first time I felt stared at. Yeah. And I couldn't get girls to talk to me before that.
Did you think that would make you blend in more? Dyeing your hair red?
I just thought I had such blonde hair that you know.
It's the same logic that made us folk singers.
Yeah. And then I would go on to make a lot of decisions like Yeah, Anita, Moondog's sister, did it for me. I'm not. You see Austin City Limits? It's coming out. It's kind of brown by then. Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say. Then when I met Garth Brooks, he was like, "You dyeing your hair blonde now?" And I was like, "Wow, I'm not gonna try to pretend that's not true. Nobody dyes it brown from blonde, do they?
Wow.
Can't put that in there."
When you recorded Moondog's Tavern,
That's funny you asked me that. That made me really happy because I didn't consider it a song, but then Mike Utley, the piano player for the Coral Reefers, he wanted to go. He was like, "Take me out. This guy you keep telling me about. I want to go see this." He was in town to hear him, and he's producing, and so me and Joe drive him out there, and we hung out all day with Moondog, and driving home, we always sang. That was me and Joe's thing. And it was like, "What's this?" You know? And I'm like, "I don't know. This is the thing, we don't have the chorus." He's like, "Well, this is great." You know? Yeah. And then I thought, and then Moondog was a local legend anyway on the radio. This guy named Zeke Logan had made him kind of famous, and had made Frasier people famous for being tough and rednecky. And so his sister Moondog, everyone thought that was real. Then Moondog's sister came to our shows, and then he showed up, and then me and Joe were allowed out there. And then all of a sudden, our shows were filled with Frasier people, and that their community, that Moondog and his sister's circle of friends, became our band circle of friends, and our shows turned into these Frasier things. And we were really, you could get in free if you were from Frasier, and you could come backstage. We knew, like, we were proud of that because that was part of the radio. Like, we got in that story on the radio. Me and Joe were like, they talk about us now when they talk about Frasier on the radio. For some reason, we're really proud to be part of that crowd. And then, so then when Utley was like, "Make a verse, at least one verse," I was so excited. I was like, "Moondog's gonna freak out," and he didn't like it. Not funny. He was like, "That's terrible," because there was only I think we recorded right away, and I made one verse, and they were like, "It's fine." But it wasn't fine for the dog. Yeah. He just like, I made up the double wide blues about that. Like when he thought all those verses for double wide should have been in Moondog's. Yeah. But it's too late. It was already out.
So when people would come to the shows right then, was that song like a big crowd moment, a big crowd favorite?
I think so.
It seems like it would be a great live. So.
Yeah, it was. It was good. Although, I remember it was hard for me to play in particular. On my first record, Tony, when we started recording, he was like, "You don't play guitar. You have this busker. Do you know what you're doing?" Kind of thing. And so then by the second record, I was trying to figure it out. But then I was making up stuff that I had to play it for, like, dun dun dun, dun dun dun. Like, that, in my mind, I knew it was going to be faster than I could show it to Will. Like, I was like this, dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Oh. And he's like, "I got it." Yeah. And then he was like, "It should be like, dun, dun, dun." Yeah. I think we wrote, Joe and I wrote it. So, but we made that up as our, we just made the chorus up singing in the car. Yeah. Yeah. And then when that came out, that was our like love affair with Memphis just peaked. And then the third record was going to be about, in my mind, it was about Memphis. Yeah. But in the second record, we fixed the guitar. I like that one better than the first one. I also think it's, the first one had was it Somebody's Coming? There's a couple where I speak with authority. And as soon as it came out, I was like, who is this person? You know, like, where'd you get this information, young man? You know, how do you know? You know, and so I tried to curb that. But then that I Believe You songs is sort of like trying to mock, not mock, but, you know, John Lennon. I don't believe in something, something. I just kind of turned that around. Kind of was making fun of myself for being preachy on the first one, but then when I heard it later, I'm like, oh, you're just still preaching, you know. And then there's one called Freedom American Style. It was like, how do you know? You know? And that's when I first started thinking, oh, you have things you want to say to matter or whatever, and that's pretty shallow goal, I think. And then, like, because I would think, like, where Bob Marley reacted to circumstances, Bono reacting to circumstances. John Lennon had a ton to lose by saying those things, but I was on the team. You know, my parents went broke later, but my brother had a cool car. You know, I have no. I just don't have I'm not the person. You know. Wouldn't that be cool to be like someone who said things that made everybody be nice? Fucking girls would be like, "Wah." But I think they're supposed to have a better, like, a better motivation. Or I think I wanted to say stuff, but I don't. I got over that quick. But, you know, Will Kimbrough, Eddie does the first record and sort of helps us figure out this too. He knew how to be too rock for country, too country rock. And then the day the first record came out, Will joined the band and became the leader, and kind of became amused for me. I was like, I want to be like, you know, we gelled around him. So his parts and stuff on that record are really great in my mind, you know. Maybe, although, you know, I wanted to be in a band like we had, but there was nothing like the deal where I stood up by myself and played my songs. I just, every time I did that, it worked, you know. But it worked so good that these cats were going to give me money. I could have drinking friends when I was traveling instead of being alone. And when you're first going out, you start at like 11, and people are wasted, you know. I hardly played the Seattle song at all, and we became a bar band, you know, just as a response to what was happening, you know. And Will Kimbrough is like a master, you know. So he was like our coach, and so the second record I kind of like better because there was the four of us we had played every night for the last year. We'd been to Europe, you know. And then when I met Moondog, he was a huge Jimmy Buffett guy, and he had his shit all over the place. And then Utley sees me here, then he comes down to the Planet, sees me there, calls Jimmy from Memphis, and he's about to go to San Diego to play. He's about to go to LA to play. But Utley was about to go play the Greek with Jimmy, like the next day or the day. And Jimmy said, "Bring him with you, and he'll open." And so me and Keith and Utley fly out to the Greek, and I open the show, and Jimmy's standing on the side with Clint Black and Joe Walsh, and they're watching. And I did really good, actually. And as soon as I came off, he's like, "You want to make a record for me?" And I was like, "Sure." I was like, "All right, I'll call you when I get home." And get back in this limousine. Me and Sykes got they gave us so much liquor. And we get in the limo, go to the airport, they had red eyes then, I had to be back to town because they were having Earth Day in the park in Memphis, and I had taken the gig, you know. And there was like 4 people out in this little park, and I played for them. And like me and Keith came and dropped me off, but he wasn't gonna. He was like, "I'm going to bed. Have a good gig." And like 4 people showed up under this tent, and at less than 24 hours earlier, what had been like, "What's the Greek?" You know. And I remember kind of being drunk and being up there going, I think I got a record deal. This was the weirdest thing. But I didn't tell anybody because I'd already had one. I told everybody. And it was a disaster.
And this is what led up to the second record.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we went to, and then me and Will made up one song, and I would never let anybody help me pick the song. I was just I don't know why. Even Tony, I was like, no, you don't. This is up to me. I wish I hadn't done that. Jerry Jeff has always been a big part of my thing, and he likes to go someplace that he feels comfortable and use it as a muse. And I just copy him, and that he has like an artistic life. It's like every breakfast is about what's coming artistically, you know. And so I was into that, and I'd fallen in love with that town, Fraser. I felt like part of a community. I knew the DJs. Keith was sort of Keith and Luther Dickinson's dad kind of ran the town for my part, whatever was our part of town, you know. And they were really rebellious. And I'd been living there a while. Summer was fine. My mind was, you know, wanted to hear it coming out of cars in the summer. I was singing a lot about Fraser. And I was also settling scores, though, and winning fights. And really had taken if I had that record to do over, I would have done, Will had this batch of songs that was like, I'm too young to be like, I'm trying to write a batch of songs as good as this batch over here. And I'm like, well, what about that batch over there? You know, if I had it to do again. He had, all those songs are in the world now, and he was my main influence at the time. His, and it was actually the songs he was writing that scared me all the way to Omaha, and I get spacing it now, but you know, some of his first 3 or 4 solo records is in the van, you know. He's writing it, and I'm learning. Like Keith was always saying, "Melody, man, do you like?" I thought melody was like, he'd say, "Do you have a melody?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, it's just C to F and back." You know, oh, and nobody would, like, Will was the one that said, "No, it's like it's what you're gonna sing." You know, he was like only a year or 2 older than me, but he's he'd been studying it since the life before this one, maybe a few more, you know. He's all those people like Emmylou and Rodney and Jimmy call him because they know that they don't know as much as him about putting music together, you know. And so he was so melodic, and then so I tried to be melodic, but I'm not, and that's not what anybody was like. Hey, those are some really great melodies. They're like, and I feel like my melodies are better now than they were, but I don't think that I really wanted to just, I was trying to say words that didn't get in the way, and that's not what he was doing. It's just, he was rhyming words that didn't get in the way. Like, you know, it was like a little more poetic and a little less easy to understand, very image-driven, emotion evoking, more like rock and roll lyric, and it's hard to write that. Chris Robinson is my favorite at that of the non-Dylan, Jagger, Hunter shit people. Yeah, I don't think I wrote good melodies on that thing. I think For my money, there's a song "Godsend" on there that he wrote. I'm like, God, that's what that record could have been. And if you check out that lyric style, it's like that's what I was trying to do. So like, listen to. Well, he helped me do Rocket Fuel when we did I Am Too together, but but I was just like, there's a song called Yesterdays and Used to Be's or whatever. It's like you listen to that compared to Godsend. You're like, keep at it, son. Keep at it. Yeah. And I was also talking, in that song, I was also talking about like riding too, because the lyrics, it feels like, to me, well, I don't know. I was also trying to copy his lyrics style too.
When you say that about the melody, I completely get it and understand, but I also believe there's a catchiness to cadence, and you completely knock that out of the park. I can't complain.
Thank you.
I think that it's not a big melody song, but the cadence and the pauses are very, very catchy.
Thank you. Thank you.
What
Man, that was my first one. I just loved. It's still my favorite one because of just how it happened. And, that's my favorite one. That's my favorite song of mine still. And I feel like that's like, you know how John always opened with "Blow Up Your TV" and Jerry Jeff always opened with "Hey Buckaroos." I'm like, this is. If I had to pick one, like this is. It's mostly the way I make up songs, but it's got a little of that other style in it. And when I made it up, a lot happened when I made that up. I was on the road with Ingram, and they had been at this shithole, like country bar, like line dancing bar that we had accidentally been in. We were kind of, I guess, country, you know, if you think, we got booked in the shit back 40 or whatever, and they hated us like the Blues Brothers. And so I got drunk while they were being mean to Jack, and I gave them like a song, and you know, just flipped the script on them, and I thought it was exciting, and so I stand by. I was like, I did the best show. That was what I wanted to do. That was my show. That was my show. I did what what do they say in jam? You surf the wave that shows up, and I stand by my song. They got the show I wanted them to have, but there was a huge team of people. It all cost money. The label wants to know how the show went last night. It wasn't just the Daily Planet, you know. So my brother was out there, Seamus Shackelford, Sam Knight, who worked for the label. So it was just like I had fucking tried to shoot the Pope, you know. I used to do that to Planet, you know, but nobody cared. So the next day we go to Tucson, and there's a hotel still, the Hotel Congress. John Dillinger stayed there or something, and they gave me the John Dillinger room. And the band was talking to me, but the crew guys weren't talking to me. And me and Ingram were kind of out too, because he had been lippy too, you know. So everybody was giving us a lot of room that day. They're trying to like, don't do that again. And and so I sat up in that Dillinger room and made up that "Can't Complain," and it was like a Waylon song. And then it kind of moved into like almost Junior Brown. And then I was going out with this Katie Cook, and she ended up being the CMT VJ. You know, had to hide a lot of tattoos. It was Will's wife's best friend still. And I was at her apartment, and I played it for her, and she just stared at me like, I thought that was a Waylon. It's not a Waylon Jennings song. You know? And then and then I was like, yeah, okay. So I tried to fix it for her, you know. And then, but then I remember, and this is true, it was like the next time the four of us were out, everybody was like, yeah, it's better like a John Prine song. And Will had just made up Diamond in the Garbage Can, and he was like, I got one. But we weren't, and I was like, yeah, I'd rather have it be like John Prine than Waylon. and John was just about to show me. About 6 months later, John was like, what do you, your songs are like, what do you mean? Well, this one's kind of like a little Tom T. Hall thing. Well, then, why would I want to hear you sing it? You know? Yeah, he's like, don't try to do songs like me. Shit, I'm not even trying to do songs like me. You know? Just let it out. But he was trying to tell, he was, at that point, it was time for me to sort of figure out what I sounded like and what I was going to say. And he's like, are you going to win arguments with this? Are you going to tell girls who drop you? Like, there's a song on there for Katie Cook where it's just, she was dating Mike Grimes before me. And they had just started these phones where you could see who was calling. And she just didn't know. I could see where she was calling me from, you know. Like, oh, where you at, man? Oh, okay. This is Mike Grimes on my fucking thing. And so I made this awful song where I sound like, everyone says I sound like Tom Petty, but there's a song called Positively Negative. Listen to it again and tell me if, just put this in your head. It's Courtney Love singing on that one. And there's points where you're like, oh my God, that's the one. I'm like, that was the most one, like that didn't come out of me. I forced that out of me to feel better. I felt so hurt. And so I made this song about how you never hurt me like that. You know? It was like, and John was like, well, you're doing that all wrong. Yeah, I do love Mike Grimes. He's, in fact, let me say, that never bothered me about Mike. I had known him at that time. I liked him. They were deep. They'd been together for 20 years. They were inseparable friends. I had no right bitching about that. But, you know, I'm a guy. I'm from the 80s. Not as smart as the younger one. You know what I mean? So it bugged me. And then I totally used it to, and that's a good example. I was like, I was nowhere near as hurt or angry as that song would suggest. But yeah, I think Mike played with us. I think Mike played with us on the tour. I genuinely think Mike Grimes is like the Hondo Crouch of East Nashville. He was the person that was like, hey, everybody, we're going to go over here and be like this. And I'm like, well, we always do what that guy said. And he's always been the person in the rock neighborhood of this town that has the record. That everyone's like, did you hear that record that Grimes was showing him? You know, he really did set the tone for what East Nashville was. And by that I mean set, even as a social person, created, and I always felt like Kimbrough, Womack, Grimes, all the they were called the the Biscuits was the one on Grimes. Yeah, Will was the Bush, like that band and that social circle around that band. That was this art rock side of the town. Or, you know, Jason and the Scorchers would be at the parties at Will's house, and Grimes was like a tastemaker or like a Bear Jr. was, yeah, that crowd. But there was a part of Dan Baird's side of. I went to a party at Kimbrough's one time and I was like, wow, this is not country music. There's nothing about, like, everybody here is like Dan Baird's over there, and there's Jason from Jason and the Scorchers over there, and this is paradise. And there's nobody. At the time, you'd have a starch shirt with a Texas flag on it, starch Wranglers. And nobody here got any of that on, you know. Everybody here knows what Uncle Tupelo is, you know. Katie Cook knew more about rock than I did. You know, Jessica Kimbrough did too. You're like, oh. And Grimey had this record collection that was, Katie Cook couldn't keep herself from going back to. He really did. He had that store was a private record collection. In the old days, you could go see that at his place and go like, ooh, going to get a bigger place. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot on him. But I felt like, you know, he was really close to Skip, and he had that bar right in the center of things. And right before he bought it, it had been like the worst one. You really could take a chainsaw. I'd seen it happen. You go in there with a bike and start a tab, and they'd pawn it, you know. And Grimes got it, and I want to say at first it was just a jukebox, and it was all, like, if you went in there, it was just almost everybody in there. It was all Dave Jakes, and Ryan Adams was living here then, and Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings, and the music wasn't cranked, you know, but it was also like you weren't going to hear this music anywhere, you know. It was shit that Audley Freed might be interested in, you know. And so it became kind of a private club because nobody else would have thought to go in there, you know. And so, like, everybody, bands formed there, you know. The neighborhood started there, and there was the Radio Cafe up the way that Mac Hill and then Skip Litz was the sound man. But he was always at Slow, what was it called, Slow Bar the whole time? Yeah. He was always there. Him and Grimes were fucking up all, that would be the end of the night. You'd say goodbye and they'd be sitting there, you know. And that was the beginning.